Students, in the previous video we had seen about overview of WDM techniques. So now we'll see the operational principles of WDM. So your operational principles, your basic block diagram is going to consist of a wavelength multiplexer, a wavelength demultiplexer at the receiver side. So between your transmitter and your receiver you are going to have an amplifier there, where it is going to be a post amplifier and a pre-amplifier to be placed in the optical fiber, and we are going to have an inline amplifier there. So here in this case, your wavelength multiplexer, we are going to have a tunable sources, where these tunable sources are going to transmit in at different wavelengths there. So where the different optical sources are going to, we are going to use a number of optical sources, where each optical source is going to produce a wavelength. So all these different wavelengths are going to be multiplexed, and then it is going to be sent through the fiber there. So where after a certain distance you are going to have a post amplifier and then an inline amplifier, and at the receiver side you are going to have a pre-amplifier. So when the demultiplexer is going to receive all these signals, it is going to demultiplex it and it is going to send to the corresponding receivers there. And the wavelengths are going to be separated out and it is going to be received at the receiver end there. So here we are going to have the discrete wavelengths. The discrete wavelengths are going to be forming an orthogonal set of carriers. So orthogonal set of carriers means there is going to be no chance of interference. So here your discrete wavelengths is going to form an orthogonal set of carriers which can be separated, then routed and then switched without interfering with each other. So here you are going to have your WDM networks. We are going to have a variety of your passive and active devices. So the passive and active devices function is to combine, then distribute it, isolate and then amplify the optical power at different wavelengths. So here we are going to have a passive device. So when the WDM network is going to have a passive device, this passive device is not going to have any external control. So when it is not going to have any external control for their operation, there is going to be limited flexibility in their operation there. So in this case, it is going to be used to split and combine or tap off the optical signals there. But when I am going to go for active devices, these active devices are going to be wavelength dependent. So when these active devices are going to be wavelength dependent, it can be controlled optically or it can be controlled electronically. So when can be controlled optically or electronically, it is going to have a large degree of flexibility there. So when it is going to have a large degree of flexibility, then it can find more applications there, where your active WDM components are going to include tunable optical fibers, tunable source and optical amplifiers there. So here in this case, when I am going to multiplex all these different wavelengths, here the spectral width, that is whatever source we are going to use to emit the wavelength, that source should have a high spectral width there. So the spectral width of the high quality source is going to occupy only a narrow optical bandwidth there. So when it is going to occupy a narrow optical bandwidth, there is going to be two loss windows which is going to be used to produce additional operating regions. So in the bandwidth, we are going to see in the bands, we can see the two low loss windows are going to be there, which is going to provide additional operating regions there. So here to send the different wavelengths, we can use a number of light sources. So when I am going to use a number of light sources, each light source is going to emit at their peak wavelength there. So when each light source is going to emit at peak wavelength, they should be sufficiently spaced. So when it is going to be sufficiently spaced from the neighbors, it can utilize the full fiber capacity there, and the bandwidth capacity can be fully utilized. So the operating frequency band is going to be allocated to a particular light source there. So the operational frequency band, which is going to be allocated to a particular light source, is going to be normally in the range from 25 to 100 Hertz. So when I am going to use the width of the frequency or the spectral band that is going to be selected, should be taken into account. We should take into account when I am going to select the width of the frequency or the spectral band there. So what are the considerations I should take is, they should see what is going to be the possible drift in the peak wavelength emitted by the laser. Next is what is going to be the temporal variations in the wavelength response of other link components. Next is the parameter changes. So here in this case, possible drift in the peak wavelength emitted by the laser is it should not interfere with the neighboring wavelength there. So what is the maximum drift that is that can be done by a particular laser, we should see. Next is what are the temporal variations or the parameters that are going to vary in the wavelength in response of the other link components because of the link components there. So in the link components there can be a chances of the parameter changes. These parameter changes can be from the effect of component aging or it can be from temperature variations there. Because of these factors, the parameters of the components can change, which results in the variations, temporal variations in your wavelength there. So here in this case, we can see that depending on what frequency band is going to be chosen for your optical transmission, we can define the operational regions which are going to be available in the various spectral bands. So next we are going to see the bands in light spectrum. So in the bands in light spectrum, we are going to use independent narrowband regions are going to be taken from the O band to through the L bands, where these narrowband regions can be used simultaneously when it is going to be taken from O band to L band. So these regions are going to be called as a spectral width or it is going to be called as the optical bandwidth. So here the optical bandwidth, we can define it related to a particular spectral width. So how it is going to be related to a particular spectral width del lambda is, we can take the basic equation C is equal to lambda into V. So if I differentiate this expression with respect to wavelength, so now our requirement is to with respect to wavelength we want to differentiate it. If I am going to differentiate it, it is going to be your V is equal to C by lambda. So when V is equal to C by lambda, I can differentiate with respect to lambda means I can have the expression as del V is equal to C by lambda square into del lambda. That means my del V, that is the optical bandwidth, is going to be directly related to the spectral width of the spectral width del lambda there. So here we can have standard point-to-point transmission can be carried out here. So when I am going to take point-to-point transmission, then it is going to use a narrow portion of the transmission bandwidth. So the narrow transmission bandwidth is going to utilize the capability of the fiber there. So here we are going to have the total fiber width. So this is your band, this is your attenuation. We are going to plot a response of attenuation versus your wavelength. So in this, when I am going to plot the optical signal here, we can have here, we are going to have the two bands, we are going to have the attenuation to be minimum. So at the O band, we are going to have one window which is going to have a low attenuation, and at the other window we are going to have another low attenuation there. So in this case we can take the attenuation, the optical bandwidth to be 14 terahertz, that is your optical bandwidth to be 14 terahertz, and the corresponding wavelength, if I am going to see, the spectral width is going to be del lambda, that is 80 nanometers in 1310 nanometer window. Suppose if I am going to take it in the 1550 nanometer window, your del V, that is your optical bandwidth, is going to be 15 terahertz and your del lambda is going to be 120 nanometers. So the total available fiber bandwidth is going to be 30 terahertz. So here in this case, the total bandwidth if fiber optic, that is your available fiber bandwidth, is going to be around 30 terahertz, that is 200 nanometer. If I see the difference, it is going to be around 200 nanometers in this two low loss windows. So we say this is your low loss windows. The attenuation is going to be minimum. So we call it as low loss windows there. So here we are going to have your spacing, that is we are going to take a 100 gigahertz channel, where in this 100 gigahertz channel we are going to have the spacing to be, minimum spacing between the two wavelengths is going to be around 0.8 nanometers. So the channel spacing between two wavelengths is going to be around 0.8 nanometers there. So the nanometer range is going to be from 1535 to 1562 nanometers. Now we are going to see what is the relationship between your wavelength division multiplexing and your frequency division multiplexing. So both in wavelength division multiplexing and frequency division multiplexing, we are going to use your optical carrier frequencies. So when I am going to use your optical carrier frequencies, we are going to see what is going to be the standard channel spacing in terms of frequency we are going to define. And this channel spacing is going to be defined by the standards your International Telecommunication Union has already designed the channel spacing that is going to be in terms of frequency there. So why we are going to select fixed frequency spacing is rather than your wavelength, because whatever when the light is going to be propagated inside the fiber, we are going to talk in terms of wavelength, but here we are going to talk in terms of your fixed frequency spacing there rather than your constant wavelength spacing. Is when I am going to use a laser, when the laser is going to be locked to a particular operating mode, its frequency of the laser that is going to be fixed and not the wavelength. So that is why we select your fixed frequency spacing. And next is coarse wavelength division multiplexing. So a coarse wavelength division multiplexing is nothing but it is a combination of the production of full spectrum. That is, we are going to use the full spectrum width, and for that we are going to use your inexpensive optical sources, your low water content, low cost optical links that is going to be operated in access networks and LAN networks there. So there we will be using your coarse WDM methods there. So when I am going to use your coarse WDM, maximum of 18 wavelengths can be defined within the range from 1270 nanometers to 1610 nanometers. And each wavelength is going to be spaced by 20 nanometers there. And the drift tolerance can be plus or minus 2 nanometers. So here in this case, in your coarse wave division multiplexing, we are going to use inexpensive light sources there. So in these inexpensive light sources are not temperature controlled. So now we are going to see what is meant by your wavelength division multiplexing, a coarse wavelength division multiplexing and dense wavelength division multiplexing. So here your wavelength division multiplexing technology is going to use multiple wavelengths to transmit the information over a single fiber there. So when I am going to use your WDM technique, it is going to combine the wavelengths and separate at 1310 and 1550 nanometer channels, or even 850 and 1310 nanometer channels. Between these two ranges it can use, that is, it can send the wavelengths there. Next is coarse wavelength division multiplexing. So in coarse wavelength division multiplexing, we have a wider channel spacing there. So in this, the wider channel spacing is going to be around 20 nanometers. So here it is going to be low cost because the low cost optical sources are going to be used. Here we are going to combine and separate the wavelength channels with center to center spacing greater than 100 gigahertz. So the wavelength channels which you are going to separate is going to have center to center spacing which is going to be greater than 100 gigahertz there. Next is dense wavelength division multiplexing. So dense wavelength division multiplexing is going to have dense channel spacing. So dense channel spacing means more number of channels can be transmitted within the limit, within the bandwidth there. So in that case, the spacing, channel spacing is going to be around 0.8 nanometers there. So here we are going to have simultaneous transmission of 16 plus wavelengths there. So that means that I am going to have a high capacity. Since the channel spacing is less, the number of channel wavelengths that we can transmit along a single fiber is going to be more. That means the capacity can be increased in dense wavelength division multiplexing. And it is going to be operated with a wavelength channel spacing less than 100 gigahertz. Next is WDM standards. So WDM standards is, it is going to have a standard where your International Telecommunication Union is going to recommend G694.1, which is going to specify the DWDM operation, that is your dense wavelength division operation, S-band, C and L-band for the frequency spacing of 100 to 12.5 gigahertz. Or equivalently it is 0.8 to 0.1 nanometers at 1550 nanometers there. So channel spacing is going to be 0.8 to 0.1 nanometers at 1550 nanometers there. So here when I am going to specify a format, that is if it is going to be 19n.m terahertz is going to be used in C-band, which is a 100 gigahertz channel. That means that the frequency, suppose for example, the frequency is going to be 194.3 terahertz, means the channel number is going to be this 43 is going to be the channel number which is going to be specified for that particular frequency there. So here this is your dense WDM grid for 100 gigahertz spacing and 50 gigahertz spacing there. So here in this case where it is going to be used in L band and your C band. So this is going to be specified in terms of terahertz and this is going to be specified in terms of nanometers. So in terms of the terahertz means it is 100 gigahertz is a spacing. So 100 gigahertz spacing means we can see that it is 186. So 100 gigahertz is 186.10, 186.20, 186.30. That is 100 gigahertz is a spacing here. So here we can see it is going to be around 0.8 nanometers there. So here we can see that the spacing is going to be around 0.8 nanometers there. So this is your 50 gigahertz offset. So 50 gigahertz offset means 186.05. So that offset will be added with 100 gigahertz. So it is your 0.15 gigahertz. So here in this case this is your spacing. This is for L band and this is for your C band. So what are the limitations of your dense wavelength division multiplexing is it is going to have a large number of channels can be packed in a fiber there. So when I am going to physically realize a DWDM network, we need your precise wavelength selective devices. So in this case, the optical amplifiers should be used to provide long transmission distances without repeaters. So here we are going to use your optical amplifiers. The long transmission distances can be achieved without using your repeaters there. So these are your dense wavelength division multiplexing limitations there. Thank you.